Okay, we're live. 1 second. Yeah. We're live. A warm welcome to everyone tuning in today. We're live from our moomoo Singapore office for another live webinar show. I'm your host, Olivia Higgins. Now, while we wait for a few more people to join us, here's a video crafted and curated just for you. Enjoy. Welcome back, everyone, especially to those people who just joined us. You're with me, your host, Olivia Higgins. Now, I'd like to remind you that today's live show is really about education. We're here to learn together about the opportunities you can use to potentially re-strategize as we go into the second half of the year. Now, today is 1st of June, and so that's why we're always looking for new potential ways to really seek out how else we can also rethink our strategies going forward. Okay, so take this time to network, take this time to engage with us and also our expert for today's show, because it's really about building a community together so that we can help each other and also guide each other in our own personal investment journeys. So be ready to learn and ask your questions, because towards the end, we will give some prizes from us if your question gets picked out from us. Okay, so with that, today's topic, Thailand blue chips, introducing the latest investment opportunity on SGX, Thai SDRs. Now, as we mentioned before, we want you to keep investing and growing your portfolio. So really, it's important you ask the question and also share this along right now for the live if you think some of your friends or anyone can benefit from today's sharing. Today with me, you've seen him before on our online and offline events. He is the CEO and founder of Beansprout, Gerald Wong. Welcome back, Gerald.
Thanks, Olivia. Hi, everyone.
Hi, Gerald. So, for those of the people who don't know you, could you just give us a brief introduction of yourself?
Sure. My name is Gerald. I'm the founder and CEO of Beansprout. Our platform is at growbeansprout.com. And really, what we want to do is to be able to provide simple guidance towards your investment decisions.
Perfect. Thank you for that. And today's topic, right? We're talking about Thai SDRs and also potential opportunities in the Thai market. So, what is the objective of today?
So I think as we have been looking at different investment opportunities over the last 5 months, a lot of the kind of ideas have been around the Singapore market. And what we really want to do in today's session is to share a bit more about the launch of Singapore Depository Receipts. Effectively, Singapore retail investors can now trade in Thai blue chips in a convenient way. So hopefully with the sharing today, we'll be able to discuss more about this product.
Perfect. Thank you for that. So I'm going to jump straight in. Gerald, what are Thai SDRs and what is the latest investment opportunity on the Singapore exchange?
Well, so I think many of us who have been investing in the market might be familiar with American Depository Receipts. So if you're familiar with, say, Alibaba, Neo, then ADRs might be a product that you might be familiar with. So now we also have Singapore Depository Receipts. Effectively, what this does is it will give the retail investor beneficial interest towards a stock that is listed in another market. In this case, because of the linkage between the Singapore exchange and the Thai exchange, Singapore retail investors can have exposure towards Thai blue chip stocks in a very accessible as well as low cost way.
Thank you for that. So I know you have some insights to share with us, right, regarding this. Maybe you could start off with setting the context for us in terms of opportunities with SGX.
Yeah, okay. So if I were to go through the slides, going through the one that discusses what is the economic growth outlook of Thailand, what we see is that Thailand is actually one of the fastest growing economies within the region. We have seen that actually with a lot of the global recession concerns, investors are actually looking at different markets that could still present some growth opportunities in 2023. So what we see here is that the first question is around why look at ASEAN. If you were to look at the IMF forecast for GDP growth this year, the global economy is just expected to grow at 2.8%. If you were to look across the different economies globally, in the US, you've got a lot of concerns about the US debt ceiling over the past few weeks. That has just found a resolution in the past few days. But even then, the US economic growth is just at 1.6% this year. If you look close to home, Singapore, the Ministry of Trade and Industry has got a forecast for the Singapore economy to be growing at between 0.5% and 2.5% this year. So if you look at the midpoint of that forecast range, we are looking at a growth of 1.5%. So naturally, investors are wondering what could be some of the faster growing economies in 2023. These faster growing economies happen to sit around us. So while it may not actually be in Singapore, if we were to just look at the ASEAN 5 economies, which would include, say, Thailand and Indonesia, we are looking at the economic growth of 4.5% this year. So that is significantly higher compared to what we see in the global economy, as well as what we see in the US and in Singapore. If you go to the next slide, just drilling down really into the Thai economy, this is on slide 12. What we see is that actually the Thai GDP growth has been growing very strongly. You have actually got the GDP recovering from the post-COVID lows. In 2022, we saw a growth of 2.6%. And in the first quarter of 2023, the growth momentum has really been sustained with a growth of 2.7%. So Thailand is really amplifying what we discussed earlier about the better growth prospects within ASEAN. And a lot of it is actually driven by the very strong recovery in tourist arrivals over the past few months. So if we were to look at the contribution of the tourism sector across different countries, what is very interesting is that actually Thailand has got one of the largest contribution from tourism towards its economic growth. So tourism is about 12% of the Thai GDP. This is significantly higher than a lot of the other places that we might be familiar with and often go for our holidays. So if we were to look at, say, a country like South Korea, actually tourism is just 3% of its GDP. If you look at Japan, which is also another place that a lot of my friends would like to visit, tourism is just 7% of the GDP. So we really see how big a contribution tourism has towards the Thai economy. And with the global reopening we have seen over the past few months, that has really provided a very strong uplift towards the whole Thai economy. So based on the forecast, what we see is that Thai tourist arrivals is expected to grow very strongly in 2023. We saw a very sharp drop-off in tourist arrivals in 2020 because of COVID. With the closing of the borders, that continued to decline further to just 0.43 million in 2021. With the reopening of Thailand in the middle of last year, we have started to see a bit of a bounce to 11 million, but that is still significantly below where it was prior to COVID at 40 million. What the Thai authorities are now forecasting is that in 2023, we'll see a further rebound, and the total number of tourist arrivals into Thailand is expected to be at 30 million. So definitely seeing a very strong recovery in the tourist arrival numbers, and that is really driving a very big rebound in the Thai economy. So that really provides the backdrop around why Thailand could be an interesting market to look at, especially for investors who are looking at growth opportunities and opportunities presented by the global reopening.
Thank you for that, Gerald. Thank you for setting the context, especially on the economic outlook at present and going into the second half. Now, we're already getting a lot of questions on this, but we'll save it towards the end. Again, everyone keep asking your questions for Gerald. Next question. How can active investors potentially take charge of such opportunities you just spotted in terms of their portfolio strategy?
Yes, so earlier we shared that we have now got exposure towards Thai blue chip stocks in the Singapore market. So this was just launched earlier this week, and that is why we are all very excited about this product and how this effectively allows us to get exposure towards the rebound in the Thai economy. So if you're wondering what these three stocks are, as a brief introduction, we have got Airports of Thailand, which operates 6 key airports in Thailand and controlling more than 80% of the Thai traffic. We have got CPO, which is a major convenience store operator in Thailand. If you have been to Thailand, the 7-Eleven brand is actually owned and operated by them. So that is something that provides us with exposure towards the Thai retail sector. Last but not least, we have got PTT Exploration and Production Company, which is one of the largest oil and gas companies within Asia Pacific. So with this, we'll go into a bit more detail about what these companies are and how we can think about the fundamentals of these companies. So the first one I'll start with is Airports of Thailand. What I hope everyone will be able to do with me over the next 10 minutes or so is to be able to imagine yourself being in Thailand. We are on the eve of a public holiday, but what we really want to do is to start the weekend earlier. I want to bring you to different parts of Thailand and think about how the companies there are able to provide us with different investment opportunities. So the first stop that we are going to arrive at would be the airport. And that is really where the stock airports of Thailand become something interesting to look at. So for those who have been to Bangkok over the past 6 months or 1 year, you've probably landed through the Suvarnabhumi airport. And that would be an airport that is operated by Airports of Thailand. So Airports of Thailand would operate 6 key airports within Thailand. Apart from Suvarnabhumi Airport, you've got Dong Mueang International Airport. If you're taking a budget flight, you'll probably be landing at this airport. But outside of Bangkok, we have also got a number of different airports that are being operated by AOT. So if you're in Phuket, there will be an airport that's operated by AOT as well. Chiang Mai, Chiang Rai, or even Hat Yai, those would all be airport assets that are operated by AOT. So given that these are major air hubs, what you see is that AOT would control over 80% of Thailand's air traffic. So just as a snippet, there are a total of 39 airports in Thailand. Even with the 6 airports that AOT actually operates, it would have a very significant control over all the air traffic that is in Thailand. What we have seen in terms of the passenger volume is that has recovered very strongly. And that really mirrors the entire improvement in tourist arrivals into Thailand. If you look at the number of passengers being carried by AOT, it was close to 10 million prior to COVID. Now we are looking at it being close to about 7 million. So not exactly where it was prior to COVID as yet, but compared to the levels that we saw in 2020, 2021, we have definitely seen a very strong rebound. If we go to the next slide, what are some of the key drivers for AOT to look out for? We shared earlier that one of the key drivers towards the Thai economic recovery is driven by the reopening of its borders. And likewise, what we see is that with the return of Chinese tourists into Thailand, that could provide the further growth in the tourist arrival numbers. So here's a very interesting chart where what we see is that Chinese tourists represent close to 33% of all tourist arrivals into Thailand back in 2019. So if you're wondering, with the reopening, why isn't the tourist arrivals into Thailand not back at the pre-COVID levels? That is really because we haven't seen the full recovery in the Chinese tourist arrivals, and that could help to drive a further recovery over the next 6 to 12 months. If you go to the next slide, that really shows how AOT would be able to potentially benefit from this recovery in tourist arrivals. What we see is that it has a big part of its revenue being attributed from this thing called the departure passenger service charge. And what this means is that if you're flying through one of its airport, whether you are an international tourist or whether you're taking a domestic flight, AOT would generate a revenue out of this. And this departure passenger service charge would represent about 32% of its revenue back in the previous fiscal year. With the improvement in tourist arrivals, there is scope for a further improvement in this revenue that is able to generate from more tourists actually living through its airports. So if you go to the next slide, what we see is that this improvement in tourist arrivals has already translated into an improvement in its revenue. In the first half of this year, we have seen that its revenue has grown to about 20 billion Thai baht from 5.7 Thai baht in the previous year. With the recovery in revenue, that has translated to an improvement in profit as well, such that in the first half of this year, AOT generated a profit of 2.2 billion Thai baht and really reversing from the loss in the previous 2 years. So if you're wondering how you're able to track these numbers going forward, don't worry, because I'll be able to show you how we can continue to track these numbers using the moomoo app later.
Absolutely. That's a really important point because towards the end of the sharing and insight session, we'll also do a live demo for everyone, especially because I got some questions of how they can actually access this. So, Gerald, in terms of strategy, what else can we cover for the investors? I mean, whether you're new or intermediate or advanced, how is this going to be a part of that perhaps diversification or re-strategizing of one's investment portfolio?
So we shared earlier about one of the stocks, which is Airports of Thailand. So that really provides investors with the exposure towards the recovery in the Thai tourism sector. But if we want to be thinking about interesting opportunities to diversify our portfolios, then that is where the other two Singapore Depository Receipts might also be worthwhile looking at. Next, we have got CPO. I shared earlier that that is the largest operator of convenience stores in Thailand. So earlier, we have started our journey into Bangkok. We have landed at the airport. If you have started traveling around, you'll probably end up in one of the 7-Eleven stores, whether to get a bottle of water or to get maybe a bottle of coconut juice since the weather is so hot. Okay, so that would be a store that would likely be operated by CPO, that would trade under the stock code TCPD. So if you're wondering what does CPO actually do, effectively they operate more than 14,000 stores in Thailand. And this would be a combination of the stores that it owns in itself, which we call the corporate stores, or under the franchise model, and there'll be another 7,000 stores. So in total, you've got close to 14,000 stores that are operated under the CPO chain in Thailand. This would come under the brand 7-Eleven, given that it has the right to be able to run these stores in the Thai market. But it's also worthwhile to know that CPO also has another brand called the Lotus Go Fresh in the Thai market. And when we put the two together, what we see is that CPO has a 73% market share in the convenience store market in the whole of Thailand. So that is once again very significant, and that effectively presents investors who are looking at a consumer story another idea to be looking at. If you look at the next slide, we shared earlier about the economic growth prospects of Thailand. But what we see here is that a big part of the economic growth is also driven by the very strong retail sales, especially for convenience stores in Thailand. So this chart will effectively show you what the retail sales growth would be for the Thai market, and especially for convenience stores. So we are not looking at departmental stores, we are not looking at F&B outlets, but very specifically for convenience stores. Over the past 5 quarters, we have seen very consistent growth, together with the gradual reopening of Thailand, as well as the regaining of confidence amongst the Thai consumers. So this is really a representation of how the improvement in consumer sentiment, as well as the growth in tourist arrivals, have actually translated into stronger retail sales within the Thai market. If you look at the next slide, what we see here is that outside of the macro driver, CPO is also very actively growing new stores. So over the past 5 years, it has consistently opened up at least 700 stores per year. And that is really what we want to see for a consumer company, because that allows the company to be able to further grow its revenue and potentially provide more profit and dividends to us as shareholders. So if you're wondering, how has that continued into the first quarter of this year? CPO has continued to open another 209 stores in the Thai market this year, and that puts it on track to actually being able to open another 700 stores in 2023. If you go to the next slide, apart from opening new stores, the other way that retail companies can grow its revenue would be if the company is able to generate more revenue per store. And what we see here is that in terms of the daily revenue per store, it came down in 2020 and 2021 because with COVID, people spend more time at home. They were not so frequently out on the streets and hence buying less from the convenience stores. But in 2022, once again with the reopening, that has recovered to about 77,000 daily revenue per store, but still below where it was in 2019. By the first quarter of this year, we have started to see a further recovery. And with the further reopening and more tourists arriving back into Thailand, there's this scope for the daily revenue per store to improve further. So if you go to the next slide, what we see is that convenience store would be the largest contributor to CPO's revenue, representing about 41% of its revenue in the previous fiscal year. But apart from convenience store, CPO also generates revenue from other consumer and retail segments, such as the wholesale sector, the larger concept stores where consumers will be able to buy, say, your television sets, your bed sheets, your larger items from these wholesale stores. You've also got 25% of revenue coming through from retail stores. So these are really your grocery stores. If you're familiar with the Singapore market, the equivalent of your, say, NTUC or Sheng Siong, CPO would have the ownership towards these grocery stores in Thailand as well. And together, they would make up the bulk of CPO's revenue. So if you go to the next slide, what we see here is that given that it is exposed to retail segments that are consistently growing, CPO has been able to grow its revenue between 2020 and 2022. It also made different acquisitions along the way that enabled it to have a larger revenue in 2022 versus what we saw in 2020. If we were to look at the profit of CPO, it did come down a bit in 2021 and 2022. That was driven by the higher finance expense that it incurred because of some of the acquisitions that it made. But if we were to look at the first quarter of 2023, what we saw is that it has been able to generate a profit of about 4 billion Thai baht and improving from what it saw in the first quarter of last year. So because of the improvement in terms of the revenue per store, because of some of these acquisitions starting to contribute more meaningfully, we have started to see a growth in CPO's profit once again. I shall now go to the last stock, which is PTT Exploration and Production Company. So having arrived at the airport, having gone to a convenience store, you probably want to be taking a rest back at your hotel. So to be going back, you'll probably be maybe taking a Grab ride or hailing one of the cars on the street. So that will require oil to be able to fuel the car. And the oil would likely be produced by this company, which is called PTT Exploration and Production Company, under the stock code TPED. So if you go to the next slide, PTTEP is effectively an oil and gas exploration and production company. We saw that about 3/4 of its revenue came through from gas production and another 25% coming through from liquid production, which is effectively your crude oil. Most of this oil and gas is actually sold towards the Thai market, and then it actually exports some of this energy into other markets like Southeast Asia and Middle East. If we look at the next slide, you'll probably be wondering where would its oil and gas assets actually be located at. So Thailand would actually form the bulk of its assets, representing about 46%. But outside of Thailand, PTTEP would have oil and gas assets in other parts of Southeast Asia. It will have oil and gas assets in Africa as well as the Middle East. So fairly diversified exposure towards different oil and gas fields that provides it with the visibility towards its production over the future years. If we go into the next slide, this is a very interesting chart to me because it shows where Thailand's domestic production volume actually comes through from. And what we see here is that PTTEP actually contributes about 60% of the entire Thai domestic production volume. So what this means is that PTTEP is a very important company towards the Thai economy because you've got more than 50% of the entire country's production coming through from this one company itself. Other companies that contribute towards Thailand's domestic production would be some of the other E&P companies that you might be familiar with, names such as Petronas, Chevron. All of this would effectively be contributing towards Thai energy production. So as investors who are looking at different oil and gas companies will naturally be interested in understanding what is their average cost of production. So what we see here is that if you were to look at the unit cost of production for TTTEP, it would be fairly low. So the average cost of per barrel of energy would just be at about $28. And if you were to compare that to the average selling price that it's been able to get, that would be at about $53 per barrel of energy in 2022. So this is effectively how PTTEP generates its profit, because its unit cost is just at $28 per barrel of energy. It's selling it at $53 per barrel of energy. So the difference would effectively fall through towards the profit of PTTEP. So what we see here from this chart is that it has been able to increase its average selling price given the increase in oil prices that we have seen over the past 2 years. At the same time, it has actually been able to bring down its average cost of production from above $30 per barrel of energy to now $28 per barrel of energy in 2022. So those are the things that we really want to be seeing for an oil and gas company to be able to sell at a higher price and to be able to lower its cost of production. The other thing that investors of oil and gas companies look out very closely for would be the reserves, which is something that we show next. And what we see for PTTEP is that it has got 7 years of proved reserves. And that is something that provides us with certainty that the oil and gas that it has wouldn't be running out next year or the year after. So what these proved reserves actually are is that those are reserves that are really proven to be there. And we have got certainty towards the fact that the company would be able to produce from these different oil and gas fields. We have also got probable fields. So that would be fields where it is not 100% definite that the company will be able to produce from these fields. But from a probability perspective, it is highly probable that we'll be able to find oil and gas from these fields. So if we add both up, what we see is that PTTEP has got close to 11 years of reserve life. So that provides us with the visibility towards its ability to be able to grow its production and be able to generate a profit from it over the next few years. So having gone through the different three Singapore Depository Receipts, I hope to have been able to share some of the interesting investment opportunities around this Thai blue chips over the area of Thai tourism, the growing consumer sector within Thailand, as well as how a company is able to benefit from higher oil prices.
Absolutely. Thank you, Gerald, for that, especially with the opportunities and the three sectors that you highlighted and shared about. Now, we've got some questions about the replay of this. You can actually, I'll share a link later at the end where you can scan a QR code and watch the replay if you missed out on anything that Gerald shared. Now, next question. We've covered the opportunities, Gerald, but what about managing the potential risks associated with the Thai SDR space and by extension, the market as a whole?
Yes, so I think what we are really interested in as an investor is to be able to find investment opportunities with a good risk reward. So we have discussed what are the drivers of the three blue chip names earlier, but we also want to be mindful of the risk towards investing towards Thai blue chips. So the foremost risk that will come to mind, especially for investors who are familiar with investing in the Singapore market, is definitely foreign currency risk, because these are SDRs with the underlying in the Thai market. And what we have seen over the past few years is that the Singapore dollar has been very strong. That has benefited us sitting in Singapore. But effectively, if you were to be holding on to investments in overseas markets, that could potentially present a risk to us if we will want to be converting these investments back into Singapore dollars eventually. But how we can potentially mitigate this would be hopefully with the strong growth that could be presented by some of these companies' earnings. What we want to be looking for would be the different SDRs that would be able to present us with the upside that is able to potentially offset some of this foreign currency risk, such that if we will want to be converting it back into Singapore dollar eventually, we will still be able to get capital gains out of our investments.
Now, Gerald, thank you for that. And now, could you just summarize the top learning points of today's discussion before we go into the demo and the live Q&A? We're getting a lot of questions for you, Gerald.
Okay, so I've shared quite a bit over the past 30 minutes, but I think the key message is that as investors, we are always looking out for interesting opportunities. We need not be confined towards some of the names that we are familiar with, like the Singapore banks and Singapore REITs. And with the latest product that's launched in the Singapore market, which are Thai SDRs, we can now get exposure to Thai blue chip names by trading in the Singapore market. The Thai market is interesting for investors because of the very strong recovery in tourism that we have seen, and that is expected to continue over the next 6 months with the reopening of global borders. We shared about 3 stocks: Airports of Thailand, which is the largest operator of airports in Thailand. We talked about CPO, which is the largest operator of convenience stores in the Thai market. And then lastly, we looked at PTTEP, which is one of the largest oil and gas companies in the whole of Southeast Asia.
Thank you so much, Gerald, for that. Well, we've heard the great insights, but now how can you apply the analysis that you've learned? So if you have your moomoo app on the desktop or on your phone, have it ready right now as Gerald shows you how you can be involved in the Thai SDR space and also apply what are, if you spot those opportunities for yourself, how can you be involved in investing in the Thai market? Take it away, Gerald.
Okay, so I'll be sharing my screen now, and I will be using a display of the moomoo desktop app. So this is something that you can see when you open up the desktop app. What we want to be doing is to look at the different opportunities that we shared earlier. And what I would do is to look up one of the tickers, which is Airports of Thailand, TATD. So if I want to do that, what I would do is to look it up in terms of putting in the ticker. So the stock code in Singapore, TATD. If you are not able to find that, remember you can look up the community where we have posted some of this information about the SDRs. But if you want, you can take that down as well. Airports of Thailand, that will be TATD. And what we see here would be a display. You will see how it's traded in the Singapore market today. And you can actually look at some of the latest community discussion. So Beansprout has just shared some of the insights that I've discussed with you earlier as a community post as well, which you are able to see as a display as part of the community function. Okay. So what you see here, if I were to go to the bottom, you'll be able to see announcements. But what is important to note here is that because these are not listings by the issuers on the Singapore market, so you may not actually see the announcement made by the Thai corporate being posted up on the SGX as well as on the announcement section within the moomoo app, and we can continue to look for some of these updates either under the news function or under the community function. Okay. So next, you might be interested to understand, oh, how can I keep track of the fundamentals of this company? I shared some of the revenue and profit of the company over the last 6 months and 12 months. But if I want to continue to observe how the company actually does before I invest in the company, what I can do is also look at some of the functions within moomoo. And this is found within the fundamentals tab of the moomoo app. So this is where I'm going to now. If you look at the top bar, you have the fundamentals. And what you see here would be the representation of some of the numbers that I shared earlier. You can display it from a quarterly plus annual perspective, or you want to actually look at it in terms of the latest quarterly numbers. Those would all be available within the moomoo app. So what I want to do now is to start by looking at, say, the annual numbers of AOT and whether that is something that is consistent with what I shared earlier. Okay, so if we're to look at the revenue of AOT, what we see here is that you have got a decline in the revenue in 2020 and 2021. So quite similar to what I shared earlier around the fall in tourist arrivals, and that actually impacting its revenue. But in 2022, with the slight pickup in tourist arrival numbers, what is very interesting here is that you've seen close to a doubling in terms of its revenue to 17 billion in the last fiscal year. If you scroll further down to look at its profit, what you see here is that as what we shared earlier, the company actually made a loss in FY20 as well as FY21. But what we see here is that together with the improvement in revenue, the losses actually narrowed back in the last fiscal year. So you might be wondering, oh, how has that actually continued to trend in the latest quarter? So we can then go to the quarterly tab, and what you see here would be the latest numbers reported on a quarterly basis. So this is always something that is very handy and something that I keep track of to make sure that I understand how the company's fundamentals are performing and whether they are performing in line with my thesis when I bought into the stock. Okay, so what I see here is that if I look at the revenue, it is at close to 11 billion in the last quarter, so growing very significantly from what we saw compared to 1 year ago. Okay, and likewise, if we were to look at the profit, what we see here is that it is now generating a profit of 2 billion Thai baht in the last quarter, reversing from the loss that we saw in the last fiscal year, as well as over the last 2 years. So this is something that is always very handy towards earnings season, or if you want to be doing further analysis about these different Thai blue chips after our sharing today. So this is where you can effectively go to. So once again, it is within the fundamentals tab of the moomoo app. So if you want to look at another of these Thai blue chips, I'm going to go to CPO. Recall this is actually the largest operator of convenience stores within the Thai market. Okay, so what I'm going to look for would be TCPD, which is the stock code of CPO. And what I'm going to do here is going to pull up chart of CPO. What you see here is the daily share price movement as well as the volume of CPO SDR within the Singapore market. What I'm going to do once again is look at the fundamentals of this company, and you can use this to analyze the stock and see whether that is in line with what I've shared earlier. So pulling up the fundamentals, what we see here would be once again the revenue, the profitability of CPO. I'm going to start with the annual numbers once again. So like what I shared earlier, the company has been able to grow its revenue in 2021 and 2022. And if I were to go down further and look once again for the net profit number, so it saw a profit decline in 2020 and 2021 with the higher interest expense that was incurred. But by 2022, it was able to grow its profit once again because of the growth in the stores because of the higher revenue it was able to get from each of the stores that it was operating. Next, we look at the latest quarterly numbers. So what we want to see here is that likewise, it is a sea of green, which is representing growth in terms of its revenue. In the most recent quarter, the company has been able to grow its revenue once again, really driven by the improvement in the tourist arrivals that we see within the Thai market, with the Thai consumer actually spending more at each of these different convenience stores. And looking down in terms of how that has translated to the profit, that has led to an improvement in its net income, growing by 16% compared to the previous year. So those are usually the tools that I would look at to be able to understand more about these different companies and whether the company's fundamentals would justify me actually putting an investment into the stock. So with that, hopefully I've been able to share some of the key things that I look at when investing in the different stocks. And with that, I'll hand over back to you, Olivia, to be able to take some of the questions from all our participants here today.
Thank you so much, Gerald, for that. Now, it's really about asking questions, right, today and figuring out how we can do better in this respect and re-strategizing, and also figuring out what are the potential ways we can engage the market. And for today's session, especially those who just joined us, it's about the Thai market. So we're getting a lot of questions about the instrument, but we're also getting questions about the macro aspect for Gerald. So that was the in-app sharing. So thank you for that, Gerald. To the audience, keep those questions coming. Very popular this time. So thank you for that. We're heading into the most exciting part of the live show, the live Q&A. Okay, so I just want to interject here and say that today's session, we will give away to 5 users a chance to get some stock coupon vouchers only for those in-app. Okay. Ready? So I've picked out some of the top questions while monitoring, but as we proceed on, I'm going to continue to pick out the questions. So let's dive into the first question for Gerald. So Gerald, someone would like to know, how are the blue chips SDRs chosen? You know, any particular financial sectors, and how can I make a decision based on which to choose for my current portfolio?
Okay, so I think if we were to look at the 3 different SDRs, they represent different parts of the Thai economy. And I think the idea is that as Singapore investors, through this SDRs, we are able to find different ways to be able to diversify our portfolios. I think the commonality that they share is that they are all leaders in their respective fields. So I think that is something that I hope I've been able to share with everyone here today during today's session. Whether is it one of the leading airport operators, one of the largest convenience store operators, or one of the largest oil and gas producers, the similarity that they all share is that they all have a certain degree of power within the Thai market. So in terms of how investors should then be deciding between the different blue chip stocks, I think that really depends on where do we see the opportunity being at. Each of them provides investors with different kinds of exposure. So if I am a firm believer in the recovery in the tourism sector, then investors can potentially look at AOT, given that it has got a very strong foothold towards the air travel market in Thailand. If I am a firm believer in the improvement in Thai retail sales, if I believe that over time, with the growing income of the Thai consumer, there'll be more spending in their grocery stores, in their convenience stores, then CPO might be an interesting name to be looking at. If I'm very optimistic towards oil prices, if I'm very optimistic towards gas prices, then PTTEP might be interesting to be looking at, given that what the company does is the exploration and production of oil and gas. And if it's able to sell the oil and gas at a higher price, what this would usually mean is that it will be able to generate a higher revenue, and that would typically translate into a higher profit. So depending on what investors are looking at to be able to gain exposure towards, each of these three different blue chip names will provide investors with different opportunities.
Thank you so much. And that was the first question I picked up from in-app. Now, the next question, I'm going to take it from our other broadcast channel, which is on YouTube. So someone, Dylan, thank you for your question. The next question is based on a Nikkei Asia article with Russian tourists exceeding Japanese tourists in October 2022. Would you say what are the factors that could, affect the tourism growth? And I think one of these factors would be a potential, exacerbation of the geopolitical risk.
Yeah, so I think for tourist arrival numbers, that is something that investors are always keeping a very close lookout for. It has been a key driver of the global economic recovery we have seen over the past 12 months, as we have seen a gradual reopening of borders, starting from the US, next to Europe, and then in our part of the world, we have started to see the gradual reopening over the past 12 months as well. But I think what a lot of investors are looking out for would be the return of Chinese tourists. That is starting to trickle in over the past few months as China started to reopen its borders from December last year. But we have definitely not seen a full recovery as yet. For the participants who have been to, say, some of the tourist spots in Singapore, whether is it Lau Pa Sat down the street or some of the other famous tourist places like Orchard Road, you probably have realized that we have not seen a very strong pickup in terms of the Chinese tourist arrivals as yet. But that is supposed to come through in the second half of this year, as more Chinese tourists actually are coming through to different parts of the world with the reopening of the borders. So that is something that could provide a further growth in the improvement in tourist arrival numbers. And hopefully that would be sufficient to offset some of the other headwinds that investors might be concerned about, whether is it coming through from geopolitical risk or a gradual economic slowdown.
Thank you for that. And of course, the people online as well, keep the questions coming. Next question, is there a market maker and will there be sufficient trading liquidity? How can I assess this if I choose to go forward in investing in this opportunity?
Yeah, so this is a product that was just launched on the Singapore Exchange earlier this week. There are designated market makers that will provide the liquidity towards the stock. And over the past few days, we have seen decent liquidity towards these three SDRs. So for investors who are looking at the different SDRs, what you can effectively do is that the way to be investing in these SDRs would be pretty much the same as investing in Singapore listed stock. You'll be able to access it on your trading app, just like you'll be able to access any other Singapore listed stock. The way that it is actually reflected in your trading statement would be the same as if you were investing in a Singapore stock. So that would really be the key advantage of the SDR, which is the 3 Cs, okay? The first one is cost, because typically being able to invest in these stocks in overseas markets would be more expensive. But by trading it as you would be trading any other Singapore stock, you would just be paying the brokerage fee that you incur as with trading any other Singapore stock. So that presents a lower cost option for us to be able to access this overseas investment. The second one is convenience, because you don't have to be, say, thinking about how these stocks are custodized in overseas markets. Those are all taken care for you. And effectively, you are able to access these SDRs in a convenient way, just like you are trading any other Singapore stock. The last point is really around the security, because it is custodized by the CDP. So that provides a certain degree of security towards investors who are looking at investing in these SDRs.
Thank you so much, Gerald. So the next question will be, will the dividend be taxed? And are you only limited to 3 types of stocks that you mentioned? Is there anything more that we should know about this?
Okay, so as investors, we are naturally very interested in the dividend payout. And the good news is that for investors of the SDRs, you will be paid the dividends because effectively what is being done is that the issuer will take the dividends of the underlying shares converted from Thai baht to Singapore dollars and pay out these dividends to you in Singapore dollars as a holder of the Singapore Depository Receipts. So you don't have to be worried about the FX conversion. You don't have to be worried about setting up an account in the Thai market because all of this will be handled on behalf of you as a holder of the SDR by the issuer of the SDR. Okay, so you'll be receiving your dividends once it is actually paid out by the Thai issuer, and you'll be receiving these dividends in Singapore dollar in your trading account. So that once again goes back to the point around how it can provide more convenience. In terms of other things that investors should keep a lookout for is that while it comes with the ability to receive dividends, you will not be able to get voting rights. So if you want to take part in the AGM, be able to actually have a say towards some of the decisions made by the company, unfortunately, with the SDRs, you will not be able to get voting rights for the underlying. Unless you go through the process of converting your SDR towards the underlying Thai stock, otherwise you will not be able to receive the voting rights. And that comes through to my third point, which is that the SDR is effectively convertible towards the underlying non-voting depository receipts that are held within Thailand. You will have to go through your broker to be able to do so, but the shares in Singapore would be convertible towards the underlying Thai stock. Okay, so those are the three key points to be aware of. Number one, you will receive your share of dividends. Number two, you will not be able to receive voting rights. And number three, you are able to convert your SDR towards your underlying Thai non-voting depository receipts.
Thank you for that. Next question, are there any restrictions like SIP and regarding the fees that you mentioned as well? Could you just explain a bit more on that and whether it's low? But I think the extended question that I'm just going to add on to this user's question is for the new investor, right? How can they really get to know this space, and how can they also start in terms of their journey within the Thai market?
Okay, so by joining this live session, you're already taking a first step towards understanding the Thai market and about depository receipts. So that's a good start for everyone who is on the live session tonight. But if you want to be understanding more, there are various resources that are available. You can go to our platform, growbeansprout.com, where we share more about the SDRs, as well as in-depth analysis about these different issuers. What you'll be able to find if you follow our Beansprout account on the moomoo app as well is that we'll be sharing more about these SDRs over the next few weeks so that we can all learn about these Thai companies as well as what investment opportunities they present us. Okay, so that is on the learning part around the Thai SDRs, but definitely I would like to thank everyone for joining tonight because that's already a very good starting point.
I know, of course, absolutely. And yes, just as Gerald mentioned, there's so many tools out there. Even during his demo just now, there was the community, there was the learn section, and of course, Beansprout or SGX introductory courses or even articles and resources. Make use of everything for your own educational purposes. Really glad that you mentioned that, Gerald. Now, I've got another question from our first winner just now, and I think it's worth to ask as well for this because we've got some repeated questions on this. Are the SDRs protected by any security insurance policies like the US Securities Act?
Okay, so effectively there is no protection for the SDRs. So unlike your deposits that are sitting in the bank account, which are covered under the Singapore Deposit Insurance, investments in Singapore are not covered under any insurance. So that is why we need to be careful around doing our due diligence towards what we invest in. And likewise, the different platforms that we decide to be investing through these different SDRs. So I guess being able to use a platform that is regulated by the MAS, those are the different things that provide us with the certainty and definitely more security towards our investment options.
Perfect. Next question. I think this will be the last two I will ask Gerald for this live Q&A. I know there are more questions, but thank you so far. And I've picked the ones that were most relevant to today's topic. So Gerald, the next question is really about Singapore's positioning and its relationship with Thailand. So what is the outlook? If you could just summarize again the priority points for the audience in terms of, you know, the relationship between the two countries within the geopolitical risks that are happening globally, and also the uncertainty within the finance markets.
Okay, so as a starting point, the reason why this Singapore Depository Receipts have been able to be launched, I think there's a certain reflection of the close relationship that Singapore has with Thailand, because this really came through because of a very close collaboration between the Singapore Exchange as well as the Stock Exchange of Thailand. So for investors who might be familiar with the CLOP saga maybe 20 years ago, I think the difference here is that this is really a product that has been developed and actually partnered between the Singapore Exchange as well as the Stock Exchange of Thailand. So that really reflects the close collaboration between the two countries. But outside of that, we really do see the very strong linkages between our two economies. Just from maybe looking at your friends who might be visiting Thailand this long weekend, or through some of the different media that we do now have access towards what is happening in Thailand. I think that really reflects the kind of close relationship between the two economies. And I think by actually trying to understand more about these different economies, these different blue chips that are now available for investing on the Singapore Exchange, we'll be able to get a better understanding towards one of the countries that is very close to Singapore, but maybe we have not spent as much time trying to understand in the past. So do make use of this opportunity to understand more about the Thai economy, understand more about the Thai companies, because that could be something that could present an interesting investment opportunity for us.
Thank you so much, Gerald, for asking and also answering the questions, because we sometimes need to have that two-way conversation with our audience members, because it's like a dialogue for us, right? In this room right here, this virtual space, to really engage our users. So thank you everyone for those great questions. Now, Gerald, as always, what is that final takeaway before we leave the audience this evening?
Okay, I think the key takeaway for us today is really that as investors, what we really want to do is look out for interesting opportunities. And hopefully with today's session, we have been able to share some ideas that may not be so conventional, because we are looking outside of the Singapore economy that we are all familiar with. But we need not go very far. We can just stop at Thailand, somewhere that you probably have visited over the past few years. And what we have shared will be different companies that have got a very dominant position in the different industries that they operate in. So after today's session, if you've got some time this long weekend, spend some time to look at these different companies, explore the moomoo app, look up the financials that I shared earlier, and hopefully that will present you with some ideas towards what your next investment opportunity might be.
Perfect. Thank you for that last takeaway. Now, Gerald, I know you had a seminar with the SGX recently, right? Could you just share more on that and whether a replay is available?
Okay, so this was a sharing on Monday, just before the launch of the Singapore Depository Receipts. Had a great turnout at the SGX Center, because like the participants here today, many were very excited to learn more about this new product and understand more about these three Thai blue chips that we discussed. So I think over the two key sessions, my key takeaway really is that there is a very strong desire from our retail investor community to learn more. And we hope to be able to share more over time and be able to grow our knowledge together.
Perfect. That was CEO and founder of Beansprout, everyone. Gerald Wong tuning in with us directly from our moomoo Singapore office. See you for our next show together, Gerald.
See you. Thank you.
Thank you. To the audience, if you have any more questions, because I still see more here, drop us an email right here. We've got 2 emails. So if it's whether or not it's product or trading related inquiries or for collaboration with our marketing department, drop us an email right here and our teams will get back to you as soon as they can. And we can't wait to share more upcoming content and shows. Do check out the other shows we craft and create just for you. We listen to all the discussion topics and community questions online, especially in-app. So we pick out these topics and also craft them to your needs and what you want to learn more about. So keep engaging with us, and also you can watch the replay of this on here, but you'll have to scan this QR code on our socials right here to be in the know of the upcoming content we have for you. But remember, today is really educational, and really we're here to guide you as a community together towards a better financial future and also towards your self-directed journey. So really use this as that tool, and also watch the replay as well, because Gerald shared a lot of insights for you, and you can apply that as well when he had that demo session on how you can access these Thai SDRs. So really today is a bridge to connect with experts like Gerald. So keep using it as a great opportunity for yourself. So follow our socials. And also, if you're free on Monday, here are the details for our next show with a guest as well, representing the Singapore Exchange from 5 to 6 p.m. Singapore time. So around the same as this live show. Sign up right now. It was a pleasure having everyone with us. See you on Monday for our next show. In the meantime, have an excellent weekend. And once again, you're with me, Olivia Higgins. Have a profitable day.